February 1939, Bodsey Manor, Suffolk coast. A cold wind howls off the North Sea. Waves crash against the shingle below a grey manor house that's been turned into one of Britain's most secret military installations. Inside, a handful of scientists hunch over humming equipment, green cathode ray screens flickering in the dim light. Among them is Sir Robert Watson-Watt, the Scottish engineer many in the RAF still think is chasing ghosts. He wipes condensation off his glasses and peers at a faint line of spikes crawling across the oscilloscope. That, he murmurs to his assistant, Arnold Wilkins, is an aircraft 30 miles out. Outside, in the cold coastal air, a row of strange steel towers stretches toward the horizon. Each is over 300 feet tall, webbed with cables and antennae. Locals call them Watson-Watt scarecrows. RAF officers call them worse: toys, radio trickery, a waste of money. From the upper floor of the manor, Group Captain Frederick Pyle watches the sea and shakes his head. "You'll never fight a war with a wireless set," he mutters to another officer. "Give me a Hurricane any day." But Watson-Watt doesn't hear him. The line on his screen flickers again, stronger now. "Contact confirmed," he says. The scientists rush to telephones, relaying coordinates to Fighter Command Headquarters at Bentley Priory. Miles inland, in a quiet operations room near Uxbridge, a switchboard hums to life. WAF plotters in blue uniforms move colored markers across a vast table map of southern England. A call comes in. Raid forming off Calais, 20-plus aircraft. It's an experiment. There's no real enemy, not yet. But when squadron leader Douglas Bader's Hurricanes scramble from Tangmere minutes later and intercept a formation of RAF bombers flying in from France, exactly where the toys said they would be, something in the air shifts. The skeptics still scoff, but the few who've seen it work begin to whisper, perhaps these towers aren't toys after all. The months tick toward war. September 1st, 1939. Germany invades Poland. Britain mobilizes. And along the coast, the towers of the chain-home radar network hum to life. Still, most of the RAF's top brass remain unconvinced. Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding, head of Fighter Command, has staked his reputation on radar. Others, men like Air Vice Marshal Lee Mallory, see it as a distraction from real combat readiness. In smoky briefing rooms, officers argue over doctrine. The only reliable warning, one declares, is a man with eyes on the horizon. Watson-Watt just smiles thinly. Eyes can be fooled, he says. Radio waves cannot. Outside, the towers keep turning, patient, silent, watching. June 1940, RAF Fighter Command Headquarters, Bentley Priory. The smell of cigarette smoke and sweat hangs thick in the underground plotting room. Reports crackle over the wireless. Dunkirk evacuation complete. The miracle is over, but so is the illusion of safety. France has fallen. Britain stands alone. At the far end of the table, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, called Stuffy behind his back, adjusts his spectacles and studies the board. Colored markers, red for enemy, blue for friendly, inch toward each other over a paper map of southern England. Around him, young WAF operators call out bearings from the radar stations now linked in a chain from Scotland to the Isle of Wight. Raid forming off Cherbourg, altitude 10,000 feet, strength estimated 40+. Dowding's voice cuts through the noise. Scramble Biggin Hill and Tangmere sectors. A runner bolts from the room. Somewhere above, the scramble bell rings. For months, radar has been quietly proving itself. The chain home stations, stretching along the coast, detect enemy aircraft as far as 100 miles away. Their tall lattice towers send out pulses that bounce off metal, and the echoes return as blips on glowing screens. But to many pilots and commanders, it still feels like magic. At RAF Manston, Squadron Leader Peter Townsend checks his watch. "They say Jerry's up before we are," he grumbles, pulling his flight gloves tight. Then the radio crackles. "Scramble, Manston. Vector 090, Angels 15. The radar report. Townsend doesn't question it. He guns his Hurricane down the runway, wheels lifting off just as dark specks appear above the channel. Enemy bombers. Right where radar said they'd be. Within minutes, the sky turns into a chaotic dance of contrails and gunfire. Mi-109s dive from the sun. Spitfires claw upward to meet them. On the ground, Radar stations track the raid in real time, relaying positions every few seconds to the filter room at Bentley Priory, where WAF plotters slide counters across the map like pieces in a deadly game of chess. Dowding moves another token. They're over Dover now. Send in number 74 squadron. Someone murmurs, they can't keep coming like this forever. Dowding doesn't look up. They will, until we make them stop. Above the roar of engines, pilots glimpse flashes of silver, sunlight on wings. The Luftwaffe's confidence is absolute. Göring himself has promised Hitler that Britain's air defense will collapse in a week. But on radar screens across the coast, the dots keep coming, and the British keep rising to meet them. At Vintner Station on the Isle of Wight, young Corporal Jean Hughes squints at her cathode ray display. Another echo, sir, bearing 135, strength increasing. Her commanding officer, Flight Lieutenant Dixon, nods. Mark it. Notify Fighter Command. Let's see if the toys are still laughing. As the raids grow heavier through July, radar becomes the invisible shield of Britain. Each blip represents hundreds of lives. Each echo buys precious minutes for pilots to climb to altitude before the enemy crosses the coast. Still, doubts linger. Many commanders refuse to trust signals alone. Could be flocks of birds, one argues. Could be weather. But again and again, the echoes prove true. And then, one night in early August, the war reaches the towers themselves. August 12, 1940, Vintner Radar Station. German bombers streak out of the dawn, their engines low and menacing. The operators barely have time to dive for cover as explosions rip through the compound. The tower shutters, sections collapsing in fire and smoke. Hours later, a shaken technician emerges from the wreckage. The equipment is in ruins, but the receiver still works. He picks up a faint pulse, distant yet alive. Sir, he whispers into the field telephone, we're still detecting them. And somewhere in the chaos of burning buildings and crackling radios, a realization begins to take hold across Fighter Command. This network, these toy towers, are the only thing keeping the Luftwaffe from London's heart. Dowding knows it. Churchill knows it. Even the pilots know it now. The question is, can they keep the chain intact long enough to survive what's coming next? August 15, 1940, the Battle of Britain reaches its height. The dawn sky over southern England glows faint orange. From the cliffs of Dover, you can see the contrails already forming over the channel, hundreds of them. The Luftwaffe has thrown everything it has, bombers from Norway, fighters from France, all converging on the same target, the heart of Britain. Inside the underground bunker at Bentley Priory, tension is a living thing. The hum of radios, the clicking of teleprinters, the shuffle of footsteps, every sound layered over the steady voice of the duty controller. Raid detected, 40 plus, approaching from the northeast, altitude 15,000 feet. Dowding stands at the plotting table, face pale but eyes calm. Ready all southern sectors, he orders. We'll meet them over the coast. From the coast of Lincolnshire to the Isle of Wight, the chain home towers flicker to life. Massive steel masts hum with electricity as their transmitters pulse across the sky. At Dover, a young radar operator named Eileen Younghusband adjusts her controls, her face bathed in green light. She watches the faint returns spike, fade, and spike again. They're coming in waves, she calls out. Too many to count. At first, radar can only tell them where, not how high, not how many. But even this crude data buys precious time. By the time the first German formations cross the channel, the RAF is already waiting. At Biggin Hill, pilots sprint from the mess hall. Scramble, scramble. Engines roar to life. Hurricanes thunder down the runway, propellers whipping the morning air. Overhead, Spitfires from number 92 Squadron peel upward into the sunlight. Above the coast, radar-guided interception begins to show its worth. The RAF no longer wastes energy patrolling empty skies. They rise exactly where they're needed, moments before the bombers arrive. At 20,000 feet, Flight Lieutenant Geoffrey Wellham, barely 19 years old, grips his control stick tight. Where are they? He mutters. And then, out of the haze, black dots bloom into a wall of Heinkel 111s. Well, there's your bloody answer, says his wingman. The radio crackles. Tally-ho. Bandits 11 o'clock high. The Spitfires dive. Below, on radar screens, Controllers watch the blips merge and vanish as dogfights erupt. The chain-home network can't see who's winning, but the silence on the channels grows shorter each day. The system is working. The warnings are saving lives. And still, Göring refuses to believe it. In Berlin, Luftwaffe intelligence insists Britain has some kind of underground observer corps. They call radar impossible. The towers are radio masts. One report claims, nothing more. To prove it, Göring orders the bombing of the radar chain itself. On August 12th and 15th, attacks strike the towers at Ventnor, Rye, and Dover, but they rise again within hours. RAF crews patch the damage, haul new cables through the rubble, and restore the pulse. At Ventnor, Corporal Hughes stands in a half-destroyed hut, headphones over her ears, listening to the heartbeat of the system. Echoes returning, she whispers. It's still alive. By the third week of August, the RAF begins to sense the tide turning. Luftwaffe formations arrive in predictable waves. Squadrons are waiting for them every time. The radar's silent network, the invisible wall across the channel, is shaping the entire battle without a single bullet fired from its towers. On September 7th, the Luftwaffe switches strategy. London burns. Civilian targets replace airfields. The city's night sky glows orange for weeks. But the radar towers stand untouched now. Göring has decided they're useless. It's his greatest mistake, because radar keeps working even in the dark. When the bombers cross the coast at midnight, the chain-home network still sees them. The observer corps confirms direction, and night fighters climb on radar guidance. For the first time in history, Britain fights and defends by unseen eyes. By the end of September, the Luftwaffe is exhausted. The raids grow smaller, then stop. And on October 31st, 1940, the Battle of Britain is officially declared over. The towers remain, tall, silent, defiant, still humming in the sea wind. In a letter to Watson Watt, Dowding writes, "It is not too much to say that your invention has saved our island." Watson Watt, ever modest, simply replies, "Give the credit to the girls who watched the screens."